Sometimes, in order to go forward, we need to go backwards. Trying to understand where we come from can be a really arduous task. I found that I've wanted to follow my good Lord and find purpose and meaning that has great value. And yet I've also become incredibly disappointed in humanity and people and individuals. Once upon a time, before 2016, I believed that I knew exactly where I was going and what I was doing, and it was fueled by a fire of ambition. It was all about progress and building and growth and expanding and doing better, improving. And there seemed to be something noble about that. And then when everybody was pushed into a corner and having to lay low or navigate the extraordinary, there was so much that was taken up trying to understand the shifting amazement. I always say the maze masters, those that are in governance and parliament, that can write these policies, is almost like the shifting walls. I don't know if you've seen a film called Labyrinth with David Bowie in it. There's a scene with a staircase where she's trying to reach the baby, but every time the stairs shift. And it was trying to work this out. I found that I was being led further and deeper into a sense of injustice, of what is right and what is wrong. And this came down to what are the rules. I'm somebody who is very happy to toe the line and work in a team and in the collective if I understand what the rules are. I don't feel that I belonged anymore in what is so-called the mainstream. It seemed to be a world that was far away from anything I knew. Like looking into a shop window and thinking, I used to be able to afford that Dior dress, and then rubbing a few coins together and thinking, I don't think I'm going to be able to get that again. And maybe that's age and maturity. And it felt like, and I think this was Facebook, so looking at Facebook, which still seems to do that. What I'm doing now, I know that you'll be able to see this, and I'm going to look of a higher quality because of the technology. But the reality is very, very different, because this is just a frame. Everything outside of it, the journey, the cold, the fact that there's hardly anybody around because I'm in castle ruins, all of that is lost. And I think it's exactly the same when things are framed in a certain way. So I was searching, like a lot of people do, for what's real, authentic, genuine. And that was experience. But what experience meant, I no longer wanted to go into a 9 to 5, because that clock, people going into the 9 o'clock gateway and then trying to achieve something, possibly that they cared about or didn't care about, and then to manage to exit that around about 5, if they were lucky, to get some rest to be able to do it again. And the better the rest and the fitness, then the more confidence and resilience they had in order to be able to deal with it. And I, like a horse, like trying to drag me into a horse box to then load me onto a plane. It was like, I just couldn't stop kicking the box apart. And this is where my journey started. I started to find my roots, travelling around Scotland, and it really has struck me that even though a lot of the towns, they seem quiet or full of retired persons, but then again I know that I'm wrong, because it's only maybe the time that I'm around, because again, anybody with youth and vitality is caught up within a time system, and anybody outside of that is a child or an old person, or any mother that is fortunate enough to be able to be at home with their children. So, and whilst all of this is going on and people are in their small houses, I find it extraordinary how old ruins like this, they still survive and stand in epic proportions to remind people of a grand past, almost as though this romanticism, that it was much better before. I remember when. And I've been really captivated by that. It's really helped to steer me out of the noise. And when I say the noise, is often I watch people that are trying to achieve something different. They're creative, they're innovators, entrepreneurs, digital filmmakers. And they appear to be trying to find a freedom outside of the system. The maze masters, the policy writers, you can be here at this time, not that time, you can park there for an hour, but all of these time, and it's all time regulations and payment and numbers and this monetary system. And I pull back objectively to be on my own, because I've taken a long time to listen to the beating drums, to hear the smoke and the fires and the billowing and the war drums and the we must do something and this person bad, that person bad, and this almost feeding into character assassination or good team, bad team. This person's associated with that, so they've got this history of this, and therefore, and it's all trust. It's all. Are they good? Are they bad? But there always seems to be this attachment, detachment issue, obligation, and I've been spending a lot of time trying to blow away the fog. They say the fear, the obligation, the guilt. And it seems to be the source of humanity when it comes to building the construct of the bridges of relationships. This fear, this guilt, this obligation is quite a sour stream or river to navigate, a bog of eternal stench. It disappoints me, because I want to change it. I don't think this is part of humanity, and I have been whittling away and spending time pulling back to deal with my own detachment, or as they say, attachment disorder. When I say disorder, it means that I'm not in control of it and it's not orderly in a nice categorised Tupperware dish that I can peek into and go, yes, I have that, I don't have that, would you like some? I don't know. What is disorder? It seems to be a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Sometimes chaos is good. Like here, like the ruins. Sometimes one has to dig into their own legacy and into one's own bones, and deep down I have a sense of the operatic. And I don't know how far that goes or what the family history truly is, but I know that it's taken me a long time to be able to learn how to take things from the ruins to see what's important and valuable, as opposed to what isn't, and what is rubble, and what is the past. But I always seem to be trying to build something of a vast, huge scale, like it's an expectation. So I'm learning not to do that. I'm learning to become agile, almost invisible. There's so much I want to say. It can often seem like a tangent, but if you follow me, there is a sense. I do believe that we're all looking for the familiar, the family. And I'm up in Scotland. I love to come to the castles in Scotland. And I'm staying in KIRKCUDBRIGHT, if I said that right. It's not spelt how it sounds. And I went to St Cuthbert's Church and I watched a really good service. I've always said I'm not a sheep, I'm not a shepherd, I'm a sheepdog. I've always been a loner. And I spoke to him afterwards about family, and he said, everybody feels the same. Everybody's looking for family, even those that have a lot of family surrounding them. So I do therefore decipher that it's more to do with familiarity. And what is that? It's a sense of identity, which seems to be where there is so much almost ice picking away from everywhere. It's just a lot of noise. It's a bit like those Norwegian experimental bands where you just feel like it's like scraping and scratching of metal, and it's, well, I quite enjoy it. I quite enjoy it. Whereas maybe that's the Highlands in me, but it is very like that. It's obviously, it's annoying if you can't turn it off, but it's this thing of identity. It's almost like it's just grating. And as a disassociative, that means that my sense of being, it was so traumatic that I disassociated. And the only way that I can explain that is a bit like Palestine and Israel, or Nicosia, where the Turks are, as opposed to the Cypriots. And it's the no man's land in between, where it just seems to be this neglected place which has been shot out by war, that people can pass through to get from one place to the other, and it's utterly depressing and devastating. And it's almost the land of hopelessness between. Like that. And it's trying to close that gap is really painful, because there is so much resentment, bitterness and hatred, and it's like two characters that have been made to be at war, but even though they love each other dearly because they have a mutual sense of the humane, they've almost been taught to fight each other, maybe possibly against their will, but generation after generation it's this really learning to love oneself through the most heinous of conflicts and contradictions within that have been created from torturous division. It's harrowing, it's hard, it's exhausting, and it takes a lot of inner dialogue to do it. So I spend a lot of time on my own, but it does give me an understanding of, in many ways, of how the world is governed, and how cultures have been gated and hemmed in and shepherded with these electrifications of humanity against humanity. Humanity is the ring wall, the cell wall against another, and the two tribes have these ideals that give them hope that just don't align. And then there's the pain of dissonance, that one has believed this to survive and the other has believed this to survive. So when they come together, their very existence is at threat, because they need that hope. It's not that they want to kill each other or hate each other, it's just like truth. We've all been there. It's almost like trying to say to somebody, your reality is wrong. And that's really painful. Really painful. There need to be sensitive and subtle ways to be able to breadcrumb or lay out a feast to say, come here, there is abundance, and if you'd like to take some, then I'd like to talk to you. And I do like Christianity for that, but again, it then gets to the attachment and detachment and the fog, the fear, the obligation, the guilt. And when I feel that I'm being herded into an ark and registered for my attendance, that's when the gate becomes too narrow. And I understand the concept of walking through the narrow gate, but I don't believe that needs to be a threshold or a doorway into a building. I really don't. And I want to make my own relationship with Jesus and with God, because when I do, I see the gate, and it is a place within, and it is a heaven that stirs me. But as soon as I start to try to get into the real world, the bricks and mortar, to abide by timescales and other people's expectations, it's gone. Freedom is not easy. Independence, accountability, not easy. And it does require some distraction. But to go to the edges of reality, the one that's been constructed and the one we've been taught, is really painful, and it's quite scary because you don't really ever know what you're going to find. But if one has the courage to go to the window, and step outside the box, you know, these little terrace boxes that we've all been put in, that we pay a lot of money, the death pledge, the mortgage. And it's like we're desperate to climb into them and have one. And we're desperate to say, my shell is much better than your shell, because it gives kudos and status and a sense of power. And I have seen this in many places. I was searching for a home. I went all the way up to Snowdonia, and there's a delightful little village, but the big mansion and the man that owned it, a northern chap, he obviously did rule the roost, because he said to me, oh, we're going to have fun with you. And I kind of knew in that moment that his gates opened up like a big mouth, and every other little house seemed to sit on his tongue. I thought, no, thank you. But it's the wealth and the money, and people do impose themselves when they have the forces of finance. That's for sure. So the whole freedom, shouting freedom, is going to bring a lot of thieves, because to stand in a market square and shout that you're free is never a good idea. One has to turn around and say, I'm worth it. And money is like walls and defences. And it's also required in order to build. Because without the resources and the money, and I don't really believe it's a fact of whether you have a lot or you don't, I know that it comes down to the colour and the tone of the waters. The flow. What sort of colour is the flow? And I've often wondered about actual money, and why the royals never touch it. Because you think it's the paper chain. It's a blood chain, it's blood money. And all that paper that's been going through people's hands. Paper does pick up messages, for sure. It's still alive, it's the tree. It's the paper chain. And the royals don't touch it because I'm sure it brings them down. It's holding on to the rope. The slavery rope. Things are changing, though, we know that. But it is very good to be able to earn money in order to be able to create a stream and a flow, that others may come along to drink from it. And that's the only way to change things. So I think shouting and screaming at somebody for being a shill or for making money, why? Because there's plenty of it to go round. It's not like anybody's stealing. I think it's a very good thing to earn money, because it's the idea of poverty and less than that keeps people oppressed and down and poor and in bad health, because health and wealth is just the change of a letter, really. I think everybody ought to have abundance. And it's all right to take money. It's all right. Like now, things take time. So I suppose that's all I have to say really, whilst I'm in these ruins. But God bless.